Hello, guys. Welcome to the newest episode of the Snipe and Sword podcast. I am Aiden with my co-host Sean, and today we have a very special guest with us. Today we have Buffalo Sabres play-by-play announcer Dan Dunleavy. Dan, thank you for being on the podcast today.
Thanks for having me on, guys.
So, for the people that don't know who you are, can you give some background on who you are and what you do?
Yeah, my name is Dan, and I'm the play-by-play voice at the moment for the Buffalo Sabres. I'm kidding with you. Kid from Southern Ontario who grew up with Buffalo in my living room every day, from Ted Darling calling Sabres games, obviously to Rick Jenneret, and went to school out of high school at Niagara College in Welland, Ontario, not far across the border from Buffalo. And my classmates included now an extremely good friend of mine who helped get me through college by making sure I partied just enough with him and also got our work done and graduated and have both had successful careers. Chris Jenneret. So it's kind of a full circle coming to the Sabres for me, which was, quite honestly, something that you could always have hoped for. I wouldn't say it was planned that way, but it certainly worked out this way. So I'm really happy to be here. And, that's kind of a short version of who I am and how I got here.
All right, Rick. All right, Dan. So, growing up in Ontario, what was that first moment like for you when you know you wanted to become a sports announcer?
The first moment that I knew I wanted to be a sportscaster,
Yes, sir.
yeah, for me, that would have been actually, well, as a very young guy growing up. I mean, my memories are of growing up watching Hockey Night in Canada and Wide World of Sports in my living room with my mom, certainly all the time. Dad, once in a while, would sit down and take part, but generally it was um, mom and I. Even I have one sister. She really didn't take a ton of interest in sports like I did, but for me, it was always the thrill of victory, the agony of defeat, and then it was Hockey Night in Canada. So I knew pretty early on, and I played sports as soon as I could get myself in any organized sport, I did that. So it was just something I gravitated towards too. And once I went through high school and was still at a point where I was trying to think, what am I going to do? You kind of get to grade, I don't know, you get through grade nine, then grade 10, you start thinking, I might want to have a bit of a plan here so I can aim myself in whatever lane I want to get to. And for me, there was a class that we took in high school, and I believe it might have been, I think it was grade 10 up in Canada. And they took us to a cable TV station. And as soon as I walked into that TV studio, I knew right then and there that this is a life that, as a young kid, you kind of dream of being that announcer and getting into that lane. But once I saw the reality of it and realized that look, you're already actually in the door of a studio. Now, how do I get here and stay here? So that's where the, you know, kind of coming to realization moment for me in high school that I thought this is something I can really chase. And this is something that if I don't say no to anything and if I work hard at it, I really might have a shot, as much as anybody else. I mean, at
Mhm.
that stage in life, I didn't really know what kind of shot I would have or how tough it would be to get in this industry, or even more so how tough it would be to stay in this industry. Much of it due to the lack of pay when you start out. It's not a job you take to make a lot of money. So it's more for the life experience. It's for being around sports and or live entertainment, however you want to phrase it. So yeah, that's when it would have started for me. So we're talking early high school years when I realized that, the 5 to 10 year old who loves sports and loved hockey and soccer and football and everything else might have an opportunity to have somebody actually pay me to be knowledgeable and versed enough that I could be part of a broadcast somehow. My high school yearbook, actually, for my graduating year, I had written in the back when it asked for your goals when you leave high school, it was to be a cameraman at the Super Bowl. That's what I had written down because sitting on the couch at home in Georgetown, Ontario, watching the Super Bowl all the time, I thought somebody gets paid to aim a camera at a football game, and they probably get paid really good money to do it. And I thought that would be pretty cool. So that's how it all started.
Nice.
Off of that, the Super Bowl, did you have a favorite team growing up?
I did. So I'm a product. First of all, it's an arch enemy of the Buffalo Bills. Okay, so I realize that. But I grew up a Dallas Cowboys fan.
Oh,
I have never really said this publicly before, so you're actually this is an exclusive for your podcast. But the reality that I've shared with a lot of people since I moved here is growing up in Southern Ontario, when I did, the Bills were not in your living room every Sunday. The team that was, it was the Dallas Cowboys, and it was a couple of announcers that certainly are before your times, but Pat Summerall and John Madden, who you know the latter very well, they would every Sunday have a Cowboys game on their network. And so I grew up knowing Roger Staubach, Tony Dorsett, Ed Too Tall Jones. Randy White was my favorite player, a linebacker for the Cowboys. By the way, he'd fit great in the Bills system. And actually, with Randy White, for me growing up being a big fan of his, um, the way Milano plays linebacker for the Bills
Hmm.
when he's healthy and just how effective he is, just slap a big fat mustache on Milano, and that's the way Randy White used to play. So number 54. So
Yeah.
that was a team I grew up with. And then certainly being in Southern Ontario, once the television market started to open up a little bit more, and certainly once the Jim Kelly era really took hold and you became more familiar without living in Buffalo with what was going on with the Bills,
Hmm.
you couldn't help but gravitate towards that team because they were so exciting and so electrifying to watch as far as the AFC went. And for me, it was kind of a bonus because growing up being a fan of an NFC team and then realizing that for me, 2 hours from home was this NFL team that was also really exciting to watch in Buffalo. And as a kid, I didn't know much about Buffalo except for Irv Weinstein and all the morning show, Commander Tom's and Channel 7 and all that stuff that would come into my living room. Um, so for me growing up football wise, that definitely was my team. But it's certainly very obvious now that, Josh Allen is the guy for me that I just can't wait to see this guy lead his team to a Super Bowl and bring one to the city. I just have a ton of respect for how he carries himself. Love how he enjoys the game, his passion for it. He's good people too. And
Hmm.
good people make good leaders. So I'm all in on the Bills right now and Josh Allen for sure.
We all love Josh here, and we're excited for him and Haley, what the future holds for them.
And I'll
Yeah,
say this.
I don't think I've talked to anybody on even other, NFL fan bases, even in our travels with the Sabres, when you meet people from other cities.
Hmm.
I don't think I've met anybody that doesn't want Josh Allen to win a Super Bowl. I mean, they still want their Ravens or they still want their Commanders or they still want, whatever city to win a Super Bowl, but they are still big Josh Allen fans and they want to see him have success, which is it's pretty unique. It's pretty cool.
You think the Cowboys are his arch enemy? I'm a Commanders fan. I was born to hate the
Well,
boys. I'm sorry.
yeah, well, listen, and when I was growing up, that was not, it was fun though. I think you need that. You need in sports to have a good guy, bad guy as far as your own, personal perspective is. That's, growing up watching wrestling as a kid as well. It was always
Hmm.
good guy against bad guy. And for me, in my era of wrestling, we're talking years when Hulk Hogan was first coming into wrestling. So you had a whole bunch of good guys and bad guys that were really old school wrestlers before then. And you'd have some buddies that were Hulk fans, and you had some buddies that were not Hulk fans. They didn't buy into
Hmm.
Hulkamania. So it was, I think it's all good. And you're right. I grew up, listen, I'm as a Cowboys fan as a kid, the Redskins was the game that you couldn't wait to watch, right? At the time,
Yeah.
it's Commanders now, but back then it was the Washington Redskins.
Mhm.
You couldn't wait to watch those games. You had Joe Theismann, you had John Riggins, you had the Hogs, you had all that stuff going on, and there was
Oh
just
yeah.
such, yeah, there was such character to both franchises. Everybody hated, and many still do hate the Cowboys because they're so-called America's team. But I think that moniker's kind of slipped a little bit, and actually Buffalo's kind of taken that over a little bit. So
A
be
little bit.
careful. But yeah, no, it's never feel shame for cheering for a certain team, and sometimes. Especially, I found coming in from out of town and into Buffalo, I thought, well, no, I like the Bills. I mean, as I just told you,
Hmm.
you don't want to sit here and lie and say you grew up watching them every day. I couldn't. They weren't on TV. I couldn't follow them. I didn't live in the city. So for me, it was the Cowboys. I know they're hated. I get it. But you shouldn't hate them now because they're not really that good. So you're fine.
Let's keep it that way. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But staying on the good guy track, one
Yeah.
really good guy that you got to learn under Rick Generat. What was
Hmm.
it like learning under him and and the tutelage that he gave you in your early
Yeah.
career?
I'd learned what's funny, the way I was about to answer that actually speaks to the youth and all of us. I I had learned a lot before I got here. I mean, I had called a number of hockey games before I showed up in Buffalo,
Hmm.
um, at at many different levels. And for me, I know in calling 10 years of Ontario Hockey League games and watching kids go from the OHL to the NHL, and
Hmm.
um, some that are still playing in this era, some have retired, but some are still playing in this era. Casey Cizikas just had a real good
Yep.
scrap the other day, actually, and he was on the team in Toronto that I called. And then the World Junior Tournament for a decade, and then Olympic Games and World Championship hockey, and then 2 years with the Maple Leafs, and then
Hmm.
showing up in Buffalo. So I think I mentioned all that just to frame when I say I already knew what I was doing.
Hmm.
I needed to find my own way to continue my professional growth and personal growth within the job and career and around different people, right? I'm not only leaving from at the time a job with the Maple Leafs where I was calling games on radio for 2 years, then coming to Buffalo to transition, and whenever Rick was ready to step in and be at the mic the same way that he had to be ready, and doing it full time and on both mediums, TV and radio, when Ted Darling had
Hmm.
unfortunately passed away far too soon. So I knew what I was doing already. I think what I had to learn was how to do it somewhere that wasn't home for me yet. I had to make it not only my job, but I also had to learn how to evolve into fitting into the community so I could really get a good grasp on how Buffalo Sabres fans, not just from a Rick Jeanneret perspective and a Ted Darling perspective, but from the entirety of the fabric of the city or the people of the town, from a Bills fan to a Sabres fan, you know, what do they want? We can, there's tons of people that can call a game, but
Hmm.
what fits well with the community? And what I learned from Rick was that what fits well with this community is just showing your passion for the team, and don't be shy about it, and don't be afraid to get excited about it, and don't worry about somebody, um I'm going to say calling you too much of a homer, but just being too exuberant. So,
Hmm.
when the Sabres score, that's when the excitement level really goes up. Um, and I don't ever want to cheat the game. And I think RJ probably, he didn't teach me that, but he probably reassured me of that.
Hmm.
That, listen, when the Sabres score, there's nobody more excited than Rob and I when we're
Yeah.
calling a game. I mean, I, I just can't wait to get in the playoffs. I can't wait for
Yeah.
it's been 12 years here for me too, and
Yeah.
I've not yet had that experience. So I can't wait just to blow my mind when I get the opportunity to call a goal and in the building at home when it's going absolutely crazy.
Hmm.
In the meantime, I think what Rick taught me was to make sure that you are who you are. You try to entertain your listeners or viewers. And I think, like me, he never took away from any respect for the game. And by that, I mean, let's say the Sabres are playing in a game. Well, let's bring it to today.
Hmm.
Let's imagine that Ovechkin had scored the record-setting goal against the Sabres. Let's say he was
Hmm.
ahead of the pace and it had happened just, a
Yeah.
couple of games ago when we were there. I will never be the guy that just says, and he scores.
Hmm.
If there's a moment in the game, and unfortunately it's something that maybe is, not what a Sabres fan has hoped for, but it's still a holy cow moment in
Hmm.
hockey or in sports. It doesn't mean you're going to go over the top, but I think I want to give the sport the respect it deserves.
Hmm.
And my passion goes to Buffalo. My respect goes to the sport in its entirety, because it's the sport as a whole that has given me the opportunity to live this dream and actually be paid to do this. It's not a one-off entity. It's the entirety of the sport, which then branches down to, hey, we've got a team in Buffalo. We'd like you to come work here with us and work with RJ and stuff. So, I think that probably is what Rick, how he would have guided me in allowing me to just be Dan Dunleavy, 100% knowing well before I got here there could never be another Rick Jeanneret. There could never be another Ted Darling, the first voice of the team. And Rick knew that, and he spoke of that often. So I think I would just continue saying that as well, that we each have our own way of doing things. And Rick was a good example of just, look, be you, just go for it, because he sure did, and it worked for him.
Hmm. Yeah.
Well, I got to tell you, I actually loved your gesture, you and Rob, on Sunday. For those who don't know, Craig Laughlin, he had heart surgery back in January. He just returned to the booth Sunday against the Sabres. Dan and
Yep.
Rob both wore Locker Strong shirts. I'm a lifelong Capitals fan. I've been a fan for 20 years, and I absolutely love what you guys did. So I really appreciate that. Yeah, Craig and Joe, I've grown up watching them. I love them, love listening to them. So I appreciate that.
Yeah,
Um,
no worries. Listen, it's a bit of a, as much as the players are all connected, when you get into any industry, you'll find, but the broadcast industry, you think there's only, right, you've got 32 teams here and there's that many positions. So it's, you see each other, not everyone's best friends with each other because we don't have the time. We're on the road and we're going from city to city, but that group, conference groups, you'll get to know a lot more. So we're in the Eastern Conference. So we see our Eastern Conference opponents, as you're well aware, more often than twice a year. So we run into each other anywhere from 3 to 4 times a season, and you have a chance to talk. And when I read what Greg was going through, I thought that, and that he was coming back. First of all, the story I wasn't aware of because even the events of how it came to be that he needed the open heart surgery was news to him. He felt fine. He felt great. He took a body scan or had a body scan done. Alan May, a former Washington Capital, has a facility down in Tampa, and he recommended that, hey, just come on and get a body scan and let's see what it shows. And he's trying to get as many people in, and sure enough, it showed um, that Craig had an issue. And if he didn't get it taken care of, he might have been in big, big trouble. As Craig puts it, in a couple of years, he might only had 2 years left to live. It was that serious of a heart condition. Again, that he didn't know. He's so fit and in shape. His body was just pushing through a situation that was one day could have taken his life. So,
mhm.
yeah, it was an easy thing. And I saw on social media, which I'm not always a fan of, but I think when people try to do good instead of just spouse opinions on what's going on in the world, I think the good that was being done in the Lachlan Foundation and T-shirts that were being put out to raise money for awareness, that I contacted the Capitals right away, and Joe Beninati, the play-by-play guy, I gave him a shout and I said, "Hey, I think Rob and I would like to wear those shirts on our broadcast. So do you mind if we do that? They say Locker Strong." And right away, Joe got in touch with the family, and they were 100% in support of us doing that. So it was good to just do the right thing and support Craig. And he sounded great. He's sounding great being back. It's good to have him back.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, thank you very much for doing that. Going back to your college days, what was the transition like coming from Niagara? What was your kind of moment of realization that this isn't really college anymore? This is the real world. What was your kind of aha moment coming out of Niagara?
Um, well, so out of Niagara, the first station I worked at was in a town. I'll just say north of Toronto, about 45 minutes. I can tell you the name is Orangeville, and I know people can Google that. That's fine. But there was a 50,000 watt FM station that had come on the air not long after I graduated, maybe or when I graduated. But I get out of college, I'm looking for work. I moved back home to Georgetown, which is everyone's dream, right? You get out of college and you have all your freedom, then you move back home again all of a sudden. So okay, how do I get out of here? Um, Mom and dad are both listening from heaven right now, so that's okay. They have a little laugh going on. But I was aware of this radio station, and then for me, it was from Georgetown where I grew up. It was about a half an hour, 35-minute drive. Nice country drive up there to get on a 50,000 watt FM. I drove up and I met with the people there. They didn't necessarily have a job right away, but I volunteered to write news on the weekend. And what they wanted was somebody who would basically just take stories from the newspaper and rewrite them for radio and leave them for the Monday morning news crew. So I would do that. Excuse me. And then I would listen to the news on Monday because I had written half of it on Saturday and Sunday, right? Local news stories. And I would listen to the people that were on the air, and I thought, I can do that. I've come out of college. I think I'm ready to take on the entire world. I can do that. So I just kept at it. I went in and I worked for free for a number, I don't know how long, if it was 6 months or a year, but eventually an opening happened. And because I had just put myself in a position that when an opening came up, one thing you can assure yourself, and this would be advice for anybody coming out of college. If you just put yourself in that position like I did, I'm not saying work for nothing. For me, it was a situation, and I just felt it was the right thing at the time to do. But because I put myself in the lane, as soon as an opening came, I can guarantee you employers don't want to take long looking for who's going to fill the role. They'll look, but they also want to fill the role in, 5 days, not 15 days. So if you're already there, you've put yourself first in line. And that's what I've always wanted to do is make sure I'm first in line for consideration, and then we'll take it from there. Um, so the realization for me was when in writing those news stories up there, an opening came, and eventually it was actually to read sports on the morning show at this radio station, and it was to be a nighttime DJ, which I love music as well, so that was easy for me. I was doing so many things at this one station. It was just a perfect spot at the best time in my career because I was both not good enough yet, even though I thought I was, and I was definitely ready enough to learn. And I did that for 8 years. And by the time I got out of Orangeville, I was a news and sports director, albeit for 2 weeks because I started getting offers from Toronto all of a sudden. And I didn't even send any demo tapes in. Again, by being on a 50,000 watt FM and working for nothing and then just taking whatever job they would give me, turned into people who could hear that 50,000 watt station. And that's what, at least back in those days, that's what radio programmers would do. They would listen to who's reading the news in other out of town markets. And then they would start plucking them and bringing them into Toronto and offering jobs. And that's how I got my start in Toronto was, just through that way of just, again, put yourself in line, be seen, be heard. Don't be an annoyance, but be, I don't know, politely
Mhm.
ambitious, if that's a good way to put it.
Yeah, that's so. I remember watching the broadcast a few games ago when Buffalo was playing Pittsburgh, and you and Razor had a nice, funny back and forth about pronunciations. Because we all know has a little bit of an issue with certain pronunciations. I'm going to ask you which player, it could be past or current NHLer, has had the hardest pronunciation for you to do on an active basis.
It's funny, the pronunciations, once you say them a couple times, and what I will do, and I think I mentioned it on the broadcast, every game I'll pre-scout the opponent. So we have Tampa coming up next. Even though
Yep.
you know Tampa pretty well with their roster, I'll still watch their last two games. All right, just to get set for line combinations and any facts too that the Tampa broadcast kind of put out there that you can latch onto and think that's a good story. We should follow up on that
Right.
during our call. So, once you hear the home broadcaster say the name and then you just kind of practice it yourself, it's like anything, especially in the broadcasting world, you know, sit at home, say the name, practice it, call the game a little bit myself. I will here at home. That's very Star Wars speak I just did there, but um, I'll watch a game and as I'm maybe into the second game, if someone has the puck and I want to practice a name, I'll actually just start calling the game myself over top of their guys just so I get used to it. Um, Guys or gals now, of course, as the business continues to grow and more opportunities, which is fantastic. But I can't think of a specific name as far as a nationality that gives me troubles. I think my World Junior experience was great for me because I saw so many names from so many different countries at an early part of my play-by-play career that it doesn't really phase me. I see it and then I'm curious about it. I'm not scared about it. I'm curious. How does that one sound? But I will tell you that there are names that look as easy as pie that if you hear it wrong once and it sticks in your head, those are the ones that will mess with me. So Eric Chernak with the Tampa Lightning, he was hearing one person calling him Chernak and you're done because
Hmm.
it sticks in your head. So you're hearing Cernak, you're hearing
Yes.
Chernak, you're hearing Cernak, you're hearing Chernak, and then all of a sudden you just get this jumble in your head. And that, for me personally, anyway, that's when I will always have certain names. So Chernak is still a name that I just did it today. I wrote it down for the game of the weekend. I still phonetically spell his name out right, even though if you were just to walk up to me and ask me how to say his name, I got it. But once the game starts, it's just one of those, he's got the puck again. And I remember having trouble with that one for whatever reason. So that's what it is for me. And I'll tell you what, the point you bring up about Rob and I having fun with that, that's a it's not just an RJism, but that is something that, Rob certainly took from
Mhm.
RJ, and he and I talk about it all the time. We talk about it I was just telling my wife today, we talk about it before every game about reminding each other to have fun in the broadcast. And if things are going well in the game, then that kind of fun comes naturally. If the team is not doing so well, that kind of fun, you still want it to come across as natural and, very organic, but you also want to have a little idea of, where each other's going to go so you can then build off of it. So we we don't mind poking fun at each other, and we don't mind poking fun at ourselves because it's sports.
Mhm.
We're thankfully not on television telling you where you need to go to take cover for anything
Right.
or how to spend your money and everything else. We're here to tell you, hopefully more often, about the positive outcome of a hockey game. But there are going to be moments, win or lose, that you want to have fun. So that would be, one of the best things I take too from Razor is that if he was to learn anything from RJ, he talks about it all the time. Let's make sure we put a little bit of entertainment in there, for whether it's shoving a pocket full of hot dogs on camera in Razor's suit, or if it's him making fun of or shaving my head the other night, and
Yep.
then half the time telling me that I can't see. Like, he's basically calling you a blind play-by-play announcer all the time. So it's pretty funny. And you do make mistakes throughout a game, right? Like anything, you're calling it on the fly. And there was one shift. I think it might have been Washington. I think Chikrin took a shot and the six and bunched up on his jersey, and it could have been an eight. And I thought, oh, was that an Ovi goal? So I called it as if it was Ovechkin, because I thought if it wasn't, my
Mhm.
brain said if it's Ovechkin, if it's Ovechkin, you're good. If you're thinking it's Ovechkin, you better call it that way and apologize to Chikrin later. So that's
Right.
what, in my head I thought I'd rather apologize on the Chikrin goal than miss the Ovechkin goal, especially in a record-setting year. So we have fun with things like that, and professionally it can kind of bug you a little bit, but then you remind yourself, lighten up. It's a hockey game. We're good.
Speaking of lightening up with Razor, everybody saw it this year because it went viral. What was your reaction to him getting back to back years hit in the face again with a puck, unfortunately, and his hot mic that got caught?
I'm curious how long that year-to-year streak's going to go. I mean, you just said that's back-to-back seasons, right?
Yep.
So,
He got hit by Arizona last year, and this year it was against New York.
The ice is calling him back.
okay, so it was Arizona, then you said New York, right?
Yep. Yep.
I'm trying to work an acronym here that would predict for us right now in this podcast which team he gets hit by next. Um, we don't have any teams with a Y, right? I can't think of one off the top of my
Mm,
head. There's no team in the Yukon yet.
no.
No. Okay, so any. Hmm. All right, I'll have to think of something. It was an interesting moment. First of all, I mean this in all sincerity. When you see the puck go or the guy's sticks as well get in there,
Hmm.
Rob is not, and he's not going to. I'm not asking him to, but he's not wearing a helmet. He's not wearing a visor. The guys are coming in full speed. I know Rob's played the game before, but he had a helmet on. He had
Hmm.
gear on. He had a stick on that he could put up to defend himself. He had gloves on. He had a shirt on sometimes, not all the
Yes.
time. But the first thought that goes through my head, and on this play, the latest one you're talking about, there was when the puck went in there. I was already laid out on the play because I could see that the puck was going up that side of the wall. I had no idea where it was going, but at that moment I lay out just to let the play happen and see, well, then where's this puck going? Is it going in the bench? Is it going to the crowd before I start chirping about what's happening? And then we all heard the blank,
Hmm.
and the razor gets hit, and then you just I don't, there's no thought to it, and it's not an amazing thing. You just, you ask him, are you okay? Right?
Hmm.
You'd be human about it. Hey, you all
Right.
right down there? He goes, yep, I'll be fine.
Yep.
Both times he got hit, I just remember saying, are you okay down there? I mean, what else can you do?
Hmm.
It's not like you can run down and hand him a towel or throw him a towel from the press box. Like, he's got
You
people
can
down
toss
there
it
to
in
help him.
the booth.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not gonna burn him. I'm not gonna, give him a jab and make fun of him or anything, because if I don't know. They've seen too many unfortunate incidents in the
Yeah.
game that, especially if it's anywhere near the eye or if it's a
Yeah.
slapper. Even though he's got the big nugget, if it's a hard enough shot, just hope he's okay. So
Right.
that's the good news. He's okay. He became a bigger star than he already was because of it, and he can't go anywhere now. I literally mean it. He was already the most popular guy. Aside for the younger generation fans, if you were to run into Rasmus or Tage or someone like
Yeah,
that, I
right.
still think, but the total fan base from younger to older, everybody knows who Razor is. And ever since he had that moment go viral, people who don't even watch hockey know who he is. We were in a
Right.
city walking down the street. We were in Denver, and we were trying to find a place to eat dinner just after we landed in there. That was this season. So it must have been just after he got hit. And there were some younger people walking down the street, and they passed us. And they just kind of looked as we walked by. Now, if people know Rob, they'll just yell, "Hey, Razor,"
Hmm.
right? And by knowing him, I mean recognizing him. And he'll turn around and acknowledge it. But these people didn't say anything, but they turned around and just looked. And then I heard them say, "Hey, that's the guy. That's the guy that got hit and swore on TV from the hockey game." So I don't even think these people watch hockey. They just knew that that was the guy. So it's been pretty cool. So yeah.
Now, I got to ask you, you've been basically all around the country and Canada too, for that matter.
Mhm.
Um, as you broadcast and as you commentate, what has been your favorite city to visit or arenas to travel to? Do you have a specific city that you look forward to visiting?
Yeah, and anyone who's ever um, happened across an interview I've done before, but they already know the answer. For those that don't, there is no place I'd rather call a game except for Buffalo in the playoffs, or even, you know what I'm saying. We're taking the Buffalo hat off now, right?
Right.
And I think you'll find every broadcaster tell you this. There's nothing right now, anyway, like Montreal.
Yep.
It is.
Especially now that we're good.
You don't have to be ashamed to say that it is just a religion there. It is
Yeah.
a way of life that is something
Yep.
that you feel when you're there. Right now, from as a matter of fact, with the team going through, some games here where they absolutely have to get points to hang on to that second wild card. We were in there for one. Unfortunately, the Sabres did not have any fortune against Montreal this year at all, as you're well
Mhm.
aware. And when we were in there, it's the same atmosphere they just had the other night when they came back and got a point against Florida with the overtime goal by Suzuki.
Yeah.
The Bell Center is going absolutely crazy. Well, the Four Nations is a good example. The
Yeah,
Four
that
Nations, that is the Bell Center. Take all the political stuff away,
mhm.
which unfortunately was there, but the energy around the game of hockey is that all the time. And the other big reason too, in case anyone's confusing with, well, you're a Buffalo guy, the the Montreal broadcast spot, which by the way was Rick's favorite as well,
Yeah.
is directly hovering over the ice. So it's a gondola, similar to what you would have had at the Odd in Buffalo. You had it
Yeah,
at Maple
right.
Leaf Gardens in Toronto. Newer rinks started to be built, and the broadcast spots where we are, we're 8,000 miles away, and we're 800,000 miles up in the sky.
Hmm.
So that's why sometimes those plays where the six looks like it could be an eight, and you start questioning yourself, and now you're looking at a monitor and watching the live game. But when you're in Montreal, and Detroit has a similar setup now, Winnipeg has a similar setup. When I step to the ledge or the desk or the countertop with all my gear set up, I look down and the game is right below me. It is perfect. You spot everyone who's got the puck. The play, you can see the play developing when you're up high in these other rinks like New
Right.
Jersey and Anaheim, and there are some others that you're pretty high and far away. But when you're in Montreal, it's a Danny Gallivan thing. And for those that want to Google his name, it's a former Montreal Canadiens announcer who I just adored for the way he called hockey as well. It was often said that Danny Gallivan, it felt like he was hovering over the game when he called it, as if he was following the play, like just this kind of energy following over the puck. And if you ever hear Danny call a game, it does sound that way. And I've tried to take a little bit of that into my game. There'd be that and Ted Darling combined. You can't throw in Rick. He's a one of a kind.
Your Rick is wreck.
Yeah, you're not you you can put the enthusiasm in that Rick had 100%. That's the as I tell everybody. Um, but the Montreal Bell Center right now is just it's the best. It really is. And if I ever had a say in Buffalo's next arena, which I never will, but if I for some reason do, As Bob Cole, the late Bob Cole from Hockey Night in Canada, told
Yeah.
me, he spoke with Ronald Corey, who owned the Montreal Canadiens when they were building the Bell Center, and they asked Bob what he would want in a broadcast location in the new rink. And he said, you need to build a gondola. You need to keep your announcers on top of the game, not up and away from the game. And they did that for him. And what they did was they built the best DARN broadcast spot in the National Hockey League. And as I say, thankfully, some other teams are with some newer buildings. Detroit, Little Caesars building is
Yeah.
it's pretty similar.
Yeah, Montreal's definitely one of the better arenas. It's electric and
Yeah.
but
Yeah, and listen, Buffalo's electric too. I'm not saying the
oh
crowd's
yeah.
not electric. It's just there are some that you walk into, and again, a lot of it I'm talking about for what we do, right? And with
Hmm.
our job, I can't wait to get that booth every time. I know it's two times out of 82 games that we'll
Yeah.
call a year, but they're the best two times of the entire season. It's not even close
It's
of
kind of like
anywhere.
being in Buffalo for a Bills game because you just know what you're gonna get,
Yeah,
especially with the fans. Um,
yeah, yeah.
Speaking of things that you like, my favorite goal call of yours, and it's gonna be really weird because it's gonna be really niche, is last year against Carolina, when they beat them 3-2 in a shootout, and the building was absolutely on fire, is when Owen Power scored with like just after Carolina scored in the power play. And you said that there's no power outage now in Buffalo. That's like my favorite call of yours, and it
Ah,
was great. But do you
well, I
have like a
appreciate that. I forgot about that one.
it was a great
Uh,
call. I remember going on YouTube and just rewatching that call like 10 times, just kind of like it's like in my own right, like I'm trying to be a broadcaster one day.
right.
I've done play by play here for the D1 hockey team here, and but
Oh, good.
um um
How's that going? Good.
it's going good.
Yeah.
I try my best. There's obviously mistakes. It's like I've only done it like obviously when I'm playing video games, I'm commentating over it, but you kind of know
Mhm.
what's gonna going on.
And I'll be his color next year, hopefully.
Nice.
Oh,
Yeah, do it. Yeah. Well, you've seen, right? What did the guys call? They called the NCAA tournament,
yes.
right? The two guys who became very well known. They were all of a sudden on all the morning shows across the states
Hmm.
because, again, they just had passion for what they were doing. So,
Um,
yeah, we'll keep it up. And I know we're still doing an interview here,
yep.
but reach out anytime you want to talk about how things are going.
Excellent.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
We appreciate it. But do you have like a call? It could be one of your own. It could be somebody else that you personally like that you really like.
Well, one does stand out for me. Buffalo fans, you can like it. They're not going to like who it was.
Hmm.
Um, it's a Jack Eichel call, and it's not an Eichel Tower call either.
Hmm.
It's actually an Eichel and Evander Kane. And the reason why it
Is this?
stands out to me is it was a game against San Jose.
Yep. Yes, it was. I know
And
exactly where you're going with this.
yeah, the Sabres were coming back in this game,
Hmm.
and the building was buzzing. So,
Hmm.
everything we've talked about so far, I've not had that experience, a lot. We've
Hmm.
had special nights at the rink, RJ's night and different nights, Razor's night. So we've had Ryan Miller's night. We've had
Hmm.
energy in the building, and it's been fantastic. The fans here are amazing.
Hmm.
They're so well educated, and that's why, sometimes when things aren't going well, it appears as if there's some negativity around. But
Hmm.
people know their hockey here. You can't fool them.
Yeah.
They understand what they're watching, and they're understanding what they want to see over what they're seeing. So I get it. But the call, I got calls from other people that I respect so much in the business after the game because it was a highlight, obviously, and it
Yep.
was played over probably on every, NHL on the fly when they were on their wheel of
Yep.
games and stuff like that. But it was Eichel carries,
Easy.
Kane berries.
Yep.
And it wasn't even a he shoots, he scores kind of goal
No.
call because I was in the moment and I didn't even think, just like fans in the building. And it's probably, again, it's a, it's a, it's a nod to RJ that
Yeah.
you don't think about. And Tom Cheek with the Toronto Blue Jays was a great announcer as well. His touch 'em all, Joe, and Joe Carter hit the home run to win the World Series. He didn't think of that. That stuff just comes out, and there's no real magic to it. It's just I was in the moment. It's all of a sudden the Sabres are, wow, we got a chance to win this. Eichel carries, Kane berries. And I think that
Hmm.
after he buried, I finished off with a Kane scores because we're simulcast on radio, so I kind of needed to paint the entire picture. But
Hmm.
I got calls from the former producer of Hockey Night in Canada, John Shannon, or he texted me or called, and he said that was a great call. And some other people too from up in Canada with whom I worked with at the networks, and they called. RJ sent a text. I don't know if it was that one, but Rick who wasn't one for communicating a lot back and forth and really
Hmm.
patting you on the back. I mean, he was there for you, but he wasn't
Yeah.
really going to walk up and pat you on the back. He did text me one night and he said that was a great call in the winter. So it might have very well been that night, or it was another night that he did that once. But that one stands out because just not because of me, but the building was going crazy. That it was a
Yeah.
fun game. So
I vividly remember that. I was like, this is gonna date me. I was like in middle school when that happened. I vividly
yeah,
remember that. As soon as you said like I know exactly what he's talking about
where are
because
you going? Yeah,
I'm pretty sure they were down 4-1 in that game and they came back and beat them because Kane had a pair in that. And yeah, that overtime winner was just the call was absolutely
yeah.
fantastic. It was
Well,
so
it just you live off the energy, or you'll find this too,
right.
doing play by play. You live off the energy of the building and the people that are in it. So when we were going through the pandemic and we were calling games off a
Yeah.
monitor, I had a boss tell me you'll never be on the road again
Yeah.
in Buffalo.
Hmm.
And it sucked the entire life right out of my soul and everything else. I thought, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me?
Hmm.
And I thought, you've never done this job before, that
Hmm.
you actually think we're going to sit in front of television screens and just do this all the time. Now, I know it's done. I've done it. I've done it for
Hmm.
international soccer games. I've done it for international hockey games. Obviously, we've done it in the NHL for what, a season and a half or two
Yeah.
years, however long it lasted. But you wouldn't get that same call just sitting there staring at a TV. You'd get emotion, but the crowd doesn't flow through you like it does. Mayday doesn't happen if you're calling it
No,
off of a
man.
TV screen. I mean, maybe it does because it's Rick, but I don't think so. I think that the energy in the building and the energy that Rick felt that night and with La 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 Fontaine, I think that stuff happens in part. And I think Rick acknowledged this too, actually, when he had his night and when he said his farewell,
Yeah.
was that how much he loved the crowd because he realized the crowd was the fuel for those goal calls.
Mhm.
And you'll find when you call games, when you're in a gymnasium or an arena and the crowd and the atmosphere is just going absolutely bonkers and you're calling a game, you will be at your best.
Hmm.
It's just so cool how that happens. Um, you know, Bandit's come to say hello down here. You can't see him on camera, but they're not with us. Yeah, you'll find that out. And that's one of the, I'm so glad you brought it up because I'm really in a good place, happy place thinking about it right now. When
Yeah.
those that kind of energy is in the building, that's why I can't wait for playoffs in Buffalo
Yeah.
because we're gonna kill it. You know, Razor and I and our entire crew, we're gonna kill it. We're gonna have fun with it. So I'm looking forward to it.
I think we all are. I can't wait for that day. I will say I was in attendance for RJ night and I've been to some pretty great games. I went to Vegas. I went against Vegas last year when they beat them 7-2. And
Yep.
that it was great. I've never been in a building in my life that was that amped up. It was a once in a lifetime thing. It was just so great. But I'll
Yeah,
defer
he
to
earned it, right? Yeah, he
you
earned it.
know
And then Casey
definitely.
Casey Middlestack got the winner. Casey got the winner in that, and then he got the winner on RJ night, and then I think the night um was it maybe the
No,
night he retired or
Olafson got the winner against Nashville. He scored in the power play in a one timer in the second period, and then they went scoreless throughout the entire. I think they went scoreless on the third, and then yeah,
yeah,
Middlestat got the OT winner against Chicago.
yeah, it was pretty cool. Yeah, Casey closed out another season too, I think, with an overtime winner before he
Yep,
moved
against
on.
Ottawa, because I was there for that
Yeah,
game as well.
there you go. Good for you. Awesome.
But
Good.
I'll defer to Sean here. He can ask a couple questions. I've been talking a lot here, so
Yeah.
One more question for you, Dan, from me. You mentioned you worked for the Maple Leafs back in the day. Do you find it more challenging to cover a team when they're winning or losing?
As a reporter or as a play-by-play, because
Play
they're
by play.
two very different things. Because as a reporter, um, there's actually more food for investigating why things aren't going well, right? And a lot of times reporters will take some heat and they're thinking, oh, why are you so negative all the time? And I'm always the first that wants to remind everyone it is not a reporter's job to cheer for a team. And
mhm.
as a matter of fact, if there is anyone who is writing or in front of a camera openly rooting for a team, they are not reporting on the team, they are covering the team. They are not reporting on the team. There is a big difference, and it's called
Mhm.
journalism. So, um, when I worked at the Fan for a number of years in Toronto, 20 years, if the Leafs weren't winning, then it was the easiest radio show to host. I mean, ask the guys, locally in Rochester and in Buffalo at, GR, the flagship station.
Mhm.
It doesn't make your show any more fun to do because you don't want to. always talk about losing all the time, but
Right.
at least in Toronto, the phones would light up like we used to say, the phone lights up like a Christmas tree because the Leafs are not good and the people hate them. They want to talk about what they think they should do and everything else. But obviously, when you're calling a game and when you work for a franchise, yeah, it's winning is everything. And the experience I have with that and the knowledge is it's on both ends of the scale. So part of my career as well was with Toronto FC and MLS for a number of years. And probably through my 8 years or so, or however long it was calling those games in Toronto, great people around the team, loved the players coming and going, but they couldn't win. And they went through, I don't know, six GMs and eight coaches in the time I was there. It was
Yeah.
absolutely unbelievable. And then I get to Buffalo, and the same thing starts happening with the Sabres, where it's just coach after coach is getting let go, and then GM after GM is let go. And the one thing that when Toronto FC finally won their first MLS Cup was because they hired a coach by the name of Greg Vanney, and they stuck with him.
Mhm.
They didn't let him go after 2 years. They stuck with him. Now Greg is a really good coach, and but they didn't bail after 2 years because they hadn't won a championship yet, is what I'm saying. And that stability in that position actually is part of what propelled the team to eventually start moving up the ladder in the standings and then go play for a title. The same for Hockey Canada. When there's stretch that I was doing World Junior tournaments that Canada never lost a tournament, and when Canada lost a tournament, we were stunned. But now the playing field is obviously leveled off more so that it's a Canada, U.S., Finland, Sweden,
Yeah.
right? It's anyone in Russia when they're in the tournaments. It's anyone's tournament. It's not a one dominance thing. So, but my point being is I've had experience in play-by-play, thankfully, and with the Toronto Rock as well for years
Yeah.
in box lacrosse. Great games against the Bandits, who are now on their run of championships.
Yeah.
Back when I was with the Rock calling their games, Toronto was on the run of those championships. The toughest games I can tell you were in Buffalo,
Yeah.
but it was the Rock who were winning 5 out of 6 titles. And it taught me a lot about recognizing when a team has it. Not that I have answers, but you just know when you're around a team that's winning that they've got a shot. Doesn't mean they'll win because many of the championships that I've been around, teams won by a goal. Goals were scored in the last second. Jordan Eberle would score in the last second of
Yeah.
play, and all the, all these crazy moments. Jonathan Taves scores 3 shootout goals in a World Junior tournament, before they start fixing and changing rules about that. So things had to happen, but they did happen. And there was always kind of this energy or way that guys were handling themselves, and they just were playing with a confidence that they could win. So you do, as a play-by-play broadcaster, take that same kind of energy up into the booth that you're calling a game that you fully expect. Well, you talk about Joe Beninati and Craig Laughlin. They probably never expected this year to happen, but now that this year has happened and the Capitals are who they are, they're going in the booth and they're thinking, I can hear Joe's voice right now. We're winning this game, and Ovi's going to get the goal. He's going to set the right, and he is. It's all going to happen.
Yep.
And who knows how far they go in the playoffs, but they have a winning vibe and a winning way of doing things, and a lot of that comes from their coach Carberry and from their general manager, right? It just kind of filters on down. So it's a
Absolutely.
totality thing that you recognize as a broadcaster because you have no say in it, but you see it and you recognize it. So, that's what you obviously always want to build for. And when you're around it as a play-by-play guy, it's really fun because something special is right in front of you. And that's the other thing that makes you want to be at your best.
Get to our player of the day.
Yeah, so something we do on the podcast is because I feel like I have decent hockey knowledge. We do a random player of the day, and we usually have each other guess. Would you like to guess today's random player? It's kind of a little bit of a softball, I think, in my opinion. But
don't say softball because I am awful at trivia. Okay, you got to tell me that this is the hardest question you've ever asked any guest on the show.
Rob Ray would not get this if they asked it on the broadcast.
He's way better at trivia than I am.
Okay,
he's lived his entire life here, so.
Okay. So this player was drafted by Buffalo in 2008 in the first round. He played for Buffalo from 2009 till 2017, to which then he was traded to Minnesota, to where he played a 1 year in 2017-18, and then he went, I'm pretty sure he signed in Toronto in 2018-19, where he was also, I believe, traded. He spent a season and a half there, and then he was traded to Ottawa or he signed in Ottawa, excuse me, and then went to Edmonton for a couple of years and then came back to Ottawa in his last year in the NHL in 2021, 2022.
Boy, Minnesota, I had a few guesses, and then all of a sudden you put them in a whole bunch of different teams, and my brain went,
He went from
what?
Buffalo to Minnesota to Toronto to Ottawa to Edmonton back to Ottawa.
Back to Ottawa.
Yeah, his last year was in 2021, 2022 for the Senators.
Wow. So he started with us, and
Yes.
I would have been around for some of his time. Then he went to Minnesota.
He was a very popular player in Buffalo. And actually, he was traded for a popular player that came back to Buffalo.
Yeah, I know, because as soon as you
There's your big
said
hint.
Buffalo to Minnesota, I was thinking of Foligno, but then you started putting him in cities where that player did not go.
He was involved in that Foligno trade.
I
Yeah.
definitely would have gotten this. I know I would have gotten
Was
this. It probably
yes.
Go ahead, just end my pain right now.
It is Tyler Ennis.
Tyler, yeah, old number 63.
Enzo sauce.
Yeah, Enzo Sauce. You know what? Now that you mentioned that, I do remember him going back to Ottawa again. Yeah, I was a big fan of how he played the game, and yeah, he moved around a little bit there towards the end of his career, and a little bit same scenario with Casey Middleset. I'm not sure
Yeah.
what the future holds for Casey. You know, I thought he was his best version of himself when the Sabres traded him, and of course you look at the return. Um, And then now he's in Boston, which is a team that is kind of in flux right now.
Yep.
So we'll see where he ends up. But yeah, that probably was a softball. See, I told you I'm not good at trivia. Don't ask me dates of things. Don't ask me trivia. I can name that tune in one note pretty much every single time if it's any kind of song from my era growing up, and I guarantee you it won't take two notes. I'll get it. But trivia questions, I am just terrible at.
I gotcha.
Yeah. My brain throws up a block. I mean, it builds a wall immediately and says, "No, you can't do this." That's like the
It
Homer
seems to come
Simpson.
easy for him, but for whatever reason, I'm right with you. Same
Yeah.
with me.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you got a nice free thinking mind there. I think listen, I worked with Elliot Friedman at the Fan when he was just a young producer, you know, not yet on the air even at the Fan in Toronto. And he was the same way. He would stand in front of the television set and watch Final Four basketball, and we could ask him any question about NCAA basketball back to the John Thompson era at Georgetown with Patrick Ewing and Iverson and all these guys. And he would have every answer right off the tip of his tongue. I'm thinking, where do you get this from? I mean, at that time, the guy had to be, you know, early 20s. I don't even know how old Elliot was at the time when he started, but you look at where he's gone to.
Yeah.
I'm not surprised at all. So that's a strength of yours. Keep it.
I'm trying. Yeah. He'll get to like halfway through the years they played. I'm like, yeah, I know who this is.
Yep.
I have a pretty good guess.
Sean and I have to find other ways to be entertaining.
Absolutely. You got to name us like former Capitals next time.
I mean, Dan, you're already entertaining enough as it is to play-by-play guy. I cannot wait to. Hopefully, I'll see you on Saturday because I talked to Joe, and hopefully, I should be there shadowing. So I cannot wait to hopefully meet you in person for the first time. And
I'll tell you what, just take a look at you right now. If you show up on Bald for Bucks Day next year, I'm gonna get you in on this.
actually, evidently, when I was younger, I did do balls for bucks. I did make a promise, and like if anybody offers me to do like blocks for love or whatnot, I would do it for them hands down. Don't no questions asked. I would 100% do
I
blocks
think if
for
you
love.
if you guys form a broadcast team and you offer to do it together, I think you would make a lot of money for people that are trying to find a cure to survive some kind of cancer they're going through. Yeah.
Always appreciate.
Look at the head of hair you both got. It's gonna grow back in like 2 days. Come on.
This guy more so than me, though. This guy more so than 90% of the men.
Don't sell yourself short, man. That's a thick salad going on up there. You're good.
But anywho, thank you, Dan, for coming and doing this with us today. It's been an absolute pleasure, and we'll reach out here soon with everything. I'll make sure I'll send you the link and stuff when everything gets posted up on YouTube. But once again, thank you for doing this.
Thank you so much.
No worries, guys. Anytime, it was fun. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Have a good night, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye.